The 16th of October 2021 in the year of our Lord. It's been a very busy week with announcements from the National Communications Authority about authorizations approved for Radio Gold, XYZ, and for 131 others, both old and new. Now, much as this is good news, one has to read the fine print before fully jubilating in entirety. We delve into that this morning. But if you, like me, are concerned about either losing your salary or your mobile number because you're uncertain about getting your Ghana card, then our second segment from 8:30 a.m. is for you. There's been some angst over the no Ghana card, no salary, no Ghana card, no mobile SIM access. If you don't get a national ID card, certainly identifying everyone in country is good, but does it need to be done using salary or mobile phone numbers as a bargaining chip? Let's hear from you as well. You can send your messages to 055-369-8789. We are live here on TV3. We are also live on 3FM 92.7 as well as around the world at 3news.com. Follow us via our Facebook page and it's TV3 Ghana as well as 3FM 92.7, your urban lifestyle radio. I'm Jifa Bampo and I'm with you till 9:50. Thanks very much for joining us. We take a break. When we come back, our guests will join us. So you're welcome back to The Key Points. You can follow us on Twitter. Just do hashtag The Key Points. And you can also join us live at 3news.com. So it's been some 3 years in the wilderness for stations like Radio Gold, Radio XYZ, and Capital Radio, among some other media organizations. But it's been some good news this week as the NCA approves broadcast authorizations for some 133 media. Now, this reflects new applications and some of the old ones. We are learning it does include the pro-NDC, Radio Gold, and XYZ. Now, the NCA has set some conditions for these media entities. Upon fulfillment, they get provisional approval to set up. So what are the timelines, and can this NCA action be viewed as a victory for free speech? How do these media entities pick up their businesses after 3 years in an industry that is really not so endowed? But ultimately, can the NCA action be hailed as a victory for free speech, for which Ghana is well known for? Our guest this morning, Gary Nimaku, who is the fresh chairman of the Gaming Commission, and he is a private legal practitioner, member of the NPP communications team. Welcome, Mr. Nimaku, and congratulations on your new role. I think today congratulations are in order for my guests. Our other guest is Cecil Sunkwa Mills. He is the freshly minted president of the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association. He used to be the MD for DSTV, and he's now their chief consultant. So, Cecil, you're welcome as well.
Thank you.
Great. So 2 days in the row already, and you are here. So great. Hopefully in time we will have the Honorable Sam George join us as well. Share your perspectives to us via WhatsApp at 055-369-8789. You can also tweet at me. My handle is at Beho Bampo, and the Bampo ends in an H, just so that you don't make a mistake. So, gentlemen, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you.
So it's been a busy news week, and one of the big news has been that broadcast authorizations had been given for 133 broadcast entities, and somehow it slipped out there that Radio Gold, XYZ are part of it. We've not seen the full list. So let me start first with the GIBA president. Mr. Sunkwa Mills, should the NCA, in its statement announcing this, should it have added the full list of 133?
Thank you, Chifa. I think that would have been ideal because we've also had members asking exactly who is on this 133 that were existing, and we've actually not been able to receive any clear documentation showing who are the three, even though we have heard of Radio Gold XYZ, and then the Capital Radio came through there, but there has been no actual confirmation. We've made contact with the NCA, but what the response we got was they were putting together the letters to be sent out to these stations. But the stations, as at yesterday night, no station had received any clear letter from the NCA confirming this. So it would have been good if this was made public, and then the other news that follows, the perceptions and things would be clarified from the start. Would have been ideal.
Mr. Nimaku, one of the reasons why these radio stations were closed was because they were deemed to have violated the Electronic Communications Act 775. They were operating without renewing their operating licenses. They had their authorizations expired. They were, in violation of some other rules in the legislation. First, is it good that we've come to this point where we have these authorizations given?
They were not deemed to have violated the various conditions and the law. They had actually violated all the laws regulating the industry, to the extent that most of the stations that were in contention, normally the license are going for 5 years. And for 5 years, we are giving a license, then they give you conditions, and after the license, you must come for renewal. Okay? Some are expired for 5 years, 3 years, 7 years, whatever. Then they were still operating. So what the NCA did at that time was to find all those stations that were in violation, with the thinking that they were trying to bring them in line. And then they took the NCA to the tribunal. They have the tribunal.
Yes.
To the tribunal. And the tribunal said, they don't exist in law. They don't exist, in fact, in law, because the license that they ought to use to operate had indeed expired. So you cannot find them. So they said, well, if we cannot find you, and you don't exist in law, then it means that, as it stands now, we are going to revoke it entirely. So they were revoked. So clearly, what the NCA did at the time and what they did was a breach that had occurred long before. The laws were not being enforced. The laws were just not being enforced. So the fact that the laws were now enforced did not mean that any of the radio stations, for some reason, their rights were being abused. Not at all. The fact of the matter is that if you are given a license to operate a radio station in this country, there are clear guidelines that are stated on the license or the permit that is given you. It is there. It is black and white, and you cannot miss it. And if you also look at the law itself, it tells you that you ought to make sure that you fulfill the conditions for the grant of the license. So if you are given the permit and you have it in your custody, and then you are told that, let's say, a year to the expiration of the 5 years, or 6 months, whatever it is, come and renew, and you don't renew, and you are still operating, clearly you are in breach of the very license that you are using to operate your station. That is the fact of the matter. So they were not deemed. They had actually violated all the conditions for the grant of the license that they were given.
There was a view that there was a certain bias in the application of the law, and examples were brought forward about some stations that are perceived to be pro-government stations, pro-NPP stations, who were in violation but were given a pass. There's a view that the process was really just not fair.
I have not heard that perception or that allegation.
Yes,
but I have not.
It was specifically mentioned that Oman FM specifically.
Well, nobody brought me proof. They just mentioned it. Nobody brought me proof that, as a matter of fact, Oman FM was in violation, and unless you have the proof to show me that would be fine. But all the time, people were making allegations, pro-MBP stations were, for some reason, not in compliance, but they were not revoked. I have not seen the proof. But you see, I have had opportunity to review most of those files. So I know what I'm talking about. I was at the tribunal myself to represent NCA as a lawyer. So I had to advise most of the lawyers who are now litigating against NCA that look, the tribunal cannot authorize the issuance of another license. So go and make another application for a new license. As a matter of fact, those who heeded to my advice, most of them were given licenses within 6 months. Those who sought to litigate the matter at the tribunal and then went to the High Court to go and litigate the matter at the High Court, later they had to withdraw the case at the High Court, and then now say, oh, so what do we do? I said, I had given you advice a year ago and over that go and apply for a new license because the tribunal cannot order NCA to issue you with another license. You must go through the regulatory compliance. And once the license expires, you wait for it to expire. You go through the whole thing all over again. They must come to check your premises. They must come to check your machines. They must come to check your staff, whatever you are doing to make sure that you are indeed in compliance with the law. That's the difficulty. So you don't wait for the license to expire. Because the conditions that you are given on the license, it is clearly in black and white on the permit that is given you that ensure you shall renew this license so and so and so and so days or months prior to the expiration of the license. So why do you wait for it?
I think it's 6 months to the expiration of the license that you must at least start the process.
Good.
Yes.
So why do you wait sometimes, you have waited and sat down for the license itself to expire and you are still operating a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and nobody did anything. To the extent that because now we are in an environment where if you touch A, then they read political meanings into it. You touch B, political meanings into it. So then, therefore, nobody was saying anything.
So for you,
clearly,
so the laws were not being enforced, but clearly it was good we enforced it at the time.
Yes, because our lawmakers have gone to Parliament. They've gone and passed the law for us. We have sent representatives to Parliament to go to Parliament and make laws to govern us, to guide our actions and inactions, to make sure that all of us in the democratic state, our behaviors are regulated by law. And all these laws were passed by Parliament. Okay? And this law was to regulate that sector. And if you are an operator in that sector, you ought to make sure that the rules governing the sector are complied with. It's as simple as that. So for me, what happened at that time was just an enforcement of our law. It is not because somebody will say it is political, whatever you call it. I don't believe so. Because if indeed the previous officers of NCA had indeed enforced the laws at the time when those laws ought to have been enforced, we would not have reached where we reached at all. Assuming at the time they were all in breach, they had sought to enforce the law at that time, we would not have gone to where we got to. So for me, I think that now that they've been given their licenses, I'm in full support of it. Why? We are in a pluralistic media space. People want to, operate in that space. You go to NCA, you apply. When you apply and the conditions precedent, you meet them, they give you the license and you come and operate because that space is highly regulated. To the extent that if you are given a license and you come out and you even amend the shareholding structure of the rest of the company without recourse to NCA, without prior written approval from NCA, you are in breach of the statute. You get the point. Even the nature of the structure of the company, the shareholders, the directors, whatever, you have to inform them with a prior written approval before you can even go and amend the structure of your company. So if the laws want it to be enforced, or you all want the laws to be enforced, let us say so. If you read everything politics, the question I ask myself, so what happened at the time when this happened and the laws were not being enforced? Are we saying that was politics or not politics? Are we saying that our MPs who had gone to Parliament to make laws to guide our actions and inactions, our behaviors and everything, they didn't know what they were doing when they were making those laws for us? So they made the laws for us to guide us. Let all of us make sure that these laws are applied to its full extent, that these laws affect the area they must affect, so that our society is well regulated.
All right.
That is all.
Let's hear from members of the public who had some thoughts to share about this decision and announcement from the NCA.
Because of democracy, you see, we have to give everybody the chance. But the main issue is for somebody to have a TV station or radio station, the person has to go to the right channel. Without, if the person refuses to go to the right channel, we have to close down the radio station.
The license has been given to them. It is good. It's acceptable. NCA has done well that they've given them the license to come back to do business. A multi-party democracy is good so that we can have many choices. We cannot stick to one or few radio stations or TV stations. It's good that we have to get more of them so that...
In every system, there are rules and regulations. So anybody who flouts any rule or regulation, the person should be made to, do the right thing. So it's good that we have that control. It's a control. So once they meet the regulation or the requirements, yes, they should be allowed to work.
NCA, it is their duty to see that all radio stations in Ghana are registered in Ghana law. I think there are many of them around, so they should work hard to go around to check all the radio stations, and if any radio station certificate has expired, I think they should stop that radio station alone.
It's good news that they should be back. A lot of people have been listening to them, and we have a lot of them coming on board. It's okay.
And those were the thoughts of some members of the public, and I guess there's an overwhelming view that the radio stations need to be properly registered and the like. But let's introduce the Honorable Sam George, the MP for Ningo Pram Pram, who is also the Deputy Ranking Member on the Communications Committee and has been at an all-night receiving more anointing in his cause that's been ongoing. You're welcome, Honorable George.
Thank
Many
you so
thanks
much
for your time. But before I come to you, let me give you a breather. Mr. Sunkwa Mills, so you heard some members of the public there. You've heard Mr. Nimaku. You've been in this business for long enough. When it comes to these regulations, would you say that the regulator probably should have been doing a better job engaging its stakeholders, you, in the business, such that people don't forget that their registrations are expiring? I mean, we all have passports. Sometimes you open it and suddenly realize that you are on the verge of 6 months.
Given to you for a time specific. 5 years, it's 5 years. So how can you say you've forgotten? Anyway,
sometimes we forget. So I mean, for you, there was a view that, why are we doing this at this time? Why don't we give people more time and the like? When you look back, the approach then, and when you look at it now, was this something we needed to do?
Yeah, Diva, I have heard what Gary has said, and I do agree that legally, yes, they had a period and the conditions which were not met. But all the same, in delivering, I believe the NTA gives us, the broadcasters, as a service the regulator also gives. So in terms of managing that service, why would you wait for a radio station that has not met conditions to operate for that long? Now when that happens, then you find other perceptions and other things come through, reasons for that. Okay, so I thought it was a bit too long. The NCA could have been closer to the situation. If it's 6 months and I have not met the conditions, it would have been good that I would have been notified. And I remember there were some of the stations that had issues that came up. Some came through the GIBA office, and we realized some of the notifications and letters was a bit in the round robin. Some said they hadn't gotten it, but eventually it was a bit messy, but eventually some of them got sorted out, and some also got the infractions. But I think that discussion has been had, and I think the authorizations have been cleaned out, we presume, from going forward, and we would like the NCA to have a closer communication with stations. So GIBA also has a lot less to have to haggle about.
But I'm just wondering, I mean, GIBA members themselves, did they take advantage of what may be perceived to be Ghana's carte blanche for free speech and media practice such that they just took this for granted. They were oblivious. Even we are told some received notifications, they just ignored it.
Okay, it's two things. GIBA does not cover all the private radio stations. In fact, a large number of them who were affected also were not members, but some key ones, of course, were members. And when it comes to that aspect, some of the responsibility, yes, will fall mainly on the individual, because like Gary said, there are a lot of changes that happen within the organization, which can let you get into an infraction. But GIBA will not be in the position, for example, if you've had a change of your governance structure within the company, GIBA will not be able to. We can only advise, but we can work on that with the TV stations.
The TV stations, now that we don't know, so it's two things. At the time this happened, a lot of it was focused on radio stations.
Yeah.
Then there was a second set of media houses that were also in violation. These were TV stations. Do you know where we are on all of that? Because a lot of us, the focus had been on what happened after the audit in 2017. But then subsequent to that, there have been TV stations also who've fallen foul, and the NCA has had to rein them in.
Yeah. So with the TV stations, which was not too long ago.
2019, 2020, I think, yes.
Yeah, when there was that incident around Kaswa and so on. Fortunately, there was no GIBA member on that who had an issue with that case. But however, it was one of the things that we say, and I think the MCA would, they will be in the best position. I want to mention that if you look at the number of stations that we have, Ghana specific, we're about 30 million. Okay, we have for radio, it's about 529 authorizations with 428 running. TV, we have 102 stations that are running now. If you look at the volume, okay, definitely harmony can be a challenge. But that is for the regulator to decide, because they manage the space and they know how many we can contain. It has commercial issues, etc. But we're saying that when you have that large number of stations, you would have people now struggling to get visibility by doing all kinds of stuff. In GIBA, we have a clear code of ethics that we drive through our membership, okay, and we follow. And when there's even a challenge coming, we would step in and also, based on what the case is, we have a clear discussion, be it the person has faulted or not, so we can come to some conclusion. But I think with a large number, I don't know how the regulator is going to keep handling it. The second issue that came through is that we have the issue where the NCA is giving out licensing and authorizations. But in that issue, we had an issue also of content regulation. So the content that was shown by some stations, which became an issue, there's a bit of a gap that we cannot close. The NMC is supposed to regulate content. The NMC to bite is very gray. The NCA, because it issues the authorizations, can go straight away and take action. NMC would give out statements, etc., and all that. It's a bit winding. So, but currently, there's a discussion of how we take this forward to make it easier, okay, by, would I use the word, managing content and frequency without infringing also the Constitution. And this has brought about the discussion of a new broadcasting bill that we've actually taken forward. A lot of work has been done on it. We have been heavily involved, where there's some kind of convergence that has been proposed in that bill. So it makes it easy, because if a station has had an infraction just because of content which is not tasteful, but has met all the requirements with the NCA, what happens? There's a bit of a gap there. So we were currently working with all the stakeholders, the regulator, on this bill, which we hope will converge and make it a bit clear and easier for us to manage these two properties of content and the carriage going forward.
Honorable Sam George, on your Facebook page, when this came through, you wrote, promise delivered when the NCA announcement was made. What was the promise?
A very good morning to you, Jifa, and to Gary and Cecil, the newly minted president of GIBA, and to our viewers. We made a promise in 2017, September, to party supporters. When I say we, the minority, that we were going to do whatever it took, no matter how long it took, to get the radio stations that we believed had been wrongly closed down by the NCA, get them back on air. And that we're going to do everything within the law to get them back on air. For me, it was a fulfillment of that promise. And that's why I did the post. I put out the post as soon as we got word from the board of the NCA. At this juncture, let me just stop and first and foremost express my gratitudes. Because before we go into the matter, I'd like to express gratitude to a few people. First and foremost, I'd like to express gratitude to the Honorable Kennedy Ohene-Japan, popularly known as Kennedy Japan, who was chairman of the Parliamentary Select Committee on Communications. He initiated what I believe, and many people who are conversant with the story also believe, was the roadmap that led to this event of the return of the radio stations, by using the supervisory powers or oversight powers of the committee to bring the NCA and the ministry to a table to sit with some of the affected radio stations. Thanks also goes to Honorable Frederick Opariansa, who succeeded Honorable Kennedy Japan as chairman of the committee, my ranking member, Honorable Alhaji A.B.A. Fuseni, for the yeoman's job that they did, and to all members of the communications committee who worked with us. I also say a very big thank you to Mr. Kweku Sechiado, who was the former board chair of the NCA. A lot of work happened under his watch. I mean, it's impossible for any board to go through the processes of frequency authorization in 3 weeks. This board was barely 3 weeks old when they restored the licenses. So clearly, a lot of the work had been done by the previous board. And that brings me to a big thanks to Mr. Isaac Osei-Bonsu, Lawyer Wagus, who is now the chairman of the board. Any other person could have said, well, I'm not privy to whatever had happened previously, and I want to go over the whole process again. I mean, I personally had a 15-minute conversation with him, and he was clear in his mind that if the previous board had done as much work as we did, he was going to check the books, see what evidence of it existed, and he will continue the process. And true to his word, barely 2 weeks after that conversation, we had the frequency authorizations given. And so for me, I believe that this is a good sign that the committee can work, the minority can work with the current NCA board on a lot of things in that sector. And we hope that is the beginning of a lot of good things. I also want to thank our leader, Honorable Haruna Idrisu, who as leader and former communications minister guided the committee, as well as Honorable Edward Omani Buama. And finally, but not the least, the Honorable Minister for Communications and Digitalization, Honorable Eslau Ewusu Ekufo. We've had our spats, we've had heated discussions or debates or arguments on the floor of Parliament, in roundtable meetings. There have been times when threats have been thrown, words have been thrown at each other. But for me, ultimately, all that happens in love and war is fair and square. And for me, what matters now is that the radio stations are back. However, I think that it is important we learn lessons from this. And that's why I've been asked by many media houses if the condition by the NCA is not a step in the wrong direction. And I said, no. I actually agree to it, because it is, I asked the question that when banks are asked by the Bank of Ghana to attend a workshop, that's their regulator, they will attend. So if the NCA, which is the regulator, says that we want to have a sensitization workshop, that would spell out your obligations under the frequency authorization we're given to you. I don't see anything wrong with it. And I've spoken to quite a number of the beneficiary media houses, and they say, look, even if the workshop is for 3 months, we'll attend. Because what they've been through for 4 years, I mean, a one-day workshop where the NCA spells out to you what your obligations are, I don't think is a problem. I think it's a step in the right direction. It puts everybody on the same page. And then that way, nobody tomorrow can come and say, I did not know that I had to do this. Because you see, the regime that existed was a bit murky. Because you had the yearly renewals, and then you have the 5-yearly renewal. And so people were doing their yearly renewals, and in the 5th year, they go back and do their yearly renewal, and there was no communication from the NCA over a long period of time as to the 5-year renewal, which was the frequency authorization itself. They were paying the spectrum renewal fees every year. And so it's important that we clear all of that up for everybody with this setting. I believe that media owners have a responsibility to abide by all the obligations of the frequency authorization. And so if you have to pay a fee every year, you pay. If you have to pay every 5 years, you pay. But the NCA also has a responsibility to enforce the legislations that empower it to do what it has to do. You don't sleep for 14 years on the job. Wake up and say, I'm applying the bills retrospectively. And that's been the bone of contention for me, that the NCA was high-handed. It was arbitrary and capricious in the application of the law. Because if you wake up today, then you start acting from today, but you don't go back retrospectively. Again, another issue that for me must never happen again in the history of this country, irrespective of which political party is involved. And I know that there are people who may be aligned to my political inclination who are baying for blood when power changes. They want us to do the same. But I think that it's an unhealthy approach. The NCA was not unitary or uniform in the application of the law.
Okay, but I asked Gary Nimaku about that earlier, and that was before you came. And one of the things he mentioned was that at the time this decision was taken, then people contested it and went to the tribunal. And it was said by the court that the tribunal that they didn't even exist in law. So the rule was to go back and apply for frequency authorization.
No. But law, so they could not have been fined by NCA.
By NCA. So it meant that everything was down to ground zero.
That is actually a different issue from what I'm raising. When I talk about the uniformity of the application of the law, the point I'm making is there are radio stations that are operating till today. That if you're saying we're in breach of the spectrum fees or the license authorization fee, the 5-yearly fee, there were media houses that were in breach of that were not shut down by the NCA.
I see.
Unfortunately, we don't have do you have any documents?
Oh yes, we do. Oh yes, we do. And in fact,
because I remember that issue was raised.
And you see, it was that issue. And the NCA publishes a list every quarter on its website that shows you your first authorization date, your last authorization date. That document was published on the website of the NCA. I have a copy of that document. That shows when the authorizations were done, when the last authorization was done, so you could easily tell who was in default. After the issue, we started raising the issues that, okay, how come you haven't closed down station A, but you closed down station B? Then the NCA pulls down the document on its website and replaces it with a new document where they take out the last frequency authorization, so that you don't know who then paid what when. They took out one column, and that formed the basis for the Media Foundation for West Africa, Suleiman Brahma, writing to the NCA and saying that, why have you altered the document? We want the original document. The NCA didn't mind them. Then they came under the right to information. When they came under the right to information, the NCA then slapped a 2,000 Ghana cedi fine charge for that information. They contested it in court. Again, I disagree with the court ruling.
Yes,
the court says the 2,000 is too high, but pay 1,005. I think that the judge didn't understand the Right Information Act, but that's a different matter. Okay, but bottom line is, they said they should pay for it to get the original document. That document that was published by the NCA on its website, the original document, which we do have a copy of, shows that there were media houses that should also have been closed, but were not closed. And so that's where the issue of selectivity comes up.
Because some of these media houses had individuals who were
politically leaning people. You get it? So those were issues that for us were raised. And so for me, I'm just going to say that, look, going forward, the NCA must be more proactive. And again, I can give you a typical example.
Mr. Nimaku indicates that when it became evident that if you just reapplied, you would get your broadcast authorization, a number of others went back to reapply. But the likes of Radio Gold and XYZ pressed on to litigate. They went to the High Court, it came back and all that. When you look back, shouldn't the stations, irrespective of how they felt about perceived misapplication, application of the law in a form of bias, shouldn't they just have applied for the
so again, you see, it's easy to say that, and I mean, I think Gary offered some services. He's a lawyer for the NCA. You know, because
I didn't know actually.
Yeah, he's the lawyer for the NCA because there were engagements with the NCA. Look, this whole discussion of withdraw from the tribunal or withdraw from court set us back like almost 6 months, because you see, and he's a lawyer. It was first mooted by the roadmap by Kennedy Japan with the NCA and the ministry, where the ministry, we said to the ministry, restore the licenses. The ministry said, we can consider it. However, we can't consider arbitration with a party that is in court. So ask the media houses to withdraw their cases from court. Now, the media houses also said to us, can the NCA or the ministry give us a certain comfort letter that says that they are ready to go into arbitration with us? Because if we go and withdraw from court,
they could very well
and the NCA decides that they will not continue the process of arbitration, and they go back to court, the courts will deem them to have wasted the time of the court in the first instance. And I thought that was a fair case.
So let me before you continue, let me clarify that. You see, I agree with everything that you have said, but few things I want to clarify it. This court matter that came up, and the negotiations were trying to engage the
media houses.
The media houses who were aggrieved by the decision of the NCA. They have come, we said, go and discontinue with liberty to reapply. Because you see, you have two things. You discontinue entirely, or you discontinue with liberty to reapply, just in case the arbitration doesn't go well for you. So we said, well, if you don't, that trust was not there. That trust was just not there. Okay, so we said, if you don't mind, discontinue with liberty to reapply. The ambassador was their lawyer.
Okay,
you see,
at that stage,
Gary. At that stage, wait a minute. At that stage, we have all reached a certain position. That look, we hold a view that we can sit down and talk. So just come in and say, well, we will not continue this thing again, but we'll go back to the table to negotiate. But how can you be with us in court? What you're litigating in court, you've taken us again to Parliamentary Select Committee on communications, and we are here at the same time. That is the difference. But later on, what did they do? They discontinue.
So you see, again, when the committee got that request from the media houses, we reached out to the ministry and the NCA and said, could you give some assurance? Now, the NCA said they won't do it in writing to the media houses.
That is correct.
Now, the minister then gave a certain timeline. And I'm guided in some of this. The minister gave a certain timeline that withdraw and let's get moving. Now, in the course of all of this back and forth between the committee and the NCA and the lawyers for the media houses, take for example Radio Gold, Bramlabi and co, and Bassett and co, and all of them asking for those issues, the minister's timeline lapsed. She gave a 6 weeks timeline. It lapsed. Unfortunately, we couldn't reach the minister because she was also out of town. She had traveled for, I think, either ITU or one of the GSMA conferences. By the time she returned and the committee invited her, then the minister says, my offer of even they reapplying and us considering was off the table. So you see, it is.
So it became a contentious negotiation.
Absolutely.
Which meant that
it took a lot of time. At a point in time, we had to say, okay, fine. If you won't come back to sit with the committee, and this was the ministry, we would also refuse to consider your budget. It had to take some of these kinds of strong arming on both sides. And the minister herself will also at a point in time get angry with the committee and say that the committee was overstepping its bounds and trying to micromanage an agency. But you see, for me, bottom line here is this. We should never get to this place again. We should never get to this place again. Because I believe that if communication was active, because we have evidence from what the arbitration of the committee, there were media houses the NCA wrote to who failed to acknowledge and respond to the NCA. There were also media houses that wrote to the NCA that the NCA failed to acknowledge and even respond to their letters. So it is this breakdown in communication. I'll give you a typical example. Eric Opoku. Eric Opoku's radio station was fined 50,000. Okay, it was shut down and fined 50,000. Within 24 hours of being shut down, he wrote a check of 50,000 and sent it to the NCA. The NCA's office in the then Brong-Ahafo region. The NCA office in the Brong-Ahafo region accepted the check, issued him an official receipt, asked him to go back on air and start broadcasting after he had paid. 7 days later, a second letter comes from Accra that based on instructions coming from wherever, they were returning his check for the fine and shutting his radio station down.
But at that time, I think
he had not gone.
By that time, the tribunal.
No, you see, he had never gone. He never went to court. He never went to court.
The tribunal, that's separate.
Yes, you see, the tribunal. It was Radio Gold and a few stations that went to the tribunal. Yes. He never contested it.
Said anything.
He never contested. And you see, the point was.
What is the name of the station? Because
I'll need to remember. I don't have it, but I know it belongs to Opoku. The same thing happened to Collins Dowda.
Okay.
You get it. So it is some of these issues that. And it is not as though it was only NDC people.
Okay, so the point maybe I want to bring Giba in now on this is that after hearing how all of this had gone down, now the NCA says that you will get a provisional authorization when you complete this process of the workshop and the like. Honorable George says he doesn't disagree with it. The stations he has engaged say they are happy to do it, even if it's 3 months. But the question is, why for just these 133 alone? Why not do it as a wider industry engagement? Is that a view that maybe Giba can lean into?
Yeah, so Giba, we've actually started some engagement on this specific issue with the NCA, and we think a workshop for all stations will be in order. And there was also a discussion on it's just the language that was used.
Yes.
What they are calling the sensitization and that is basically an orientation.
Yeah.
You know, and it's one of the things in discussion we told and say probably if you said it's an orientation workshop, which in most cases and most industries, okay, it's important. And in this industry specifically, if you look at the conditions that you're supposed to meet, even if when you get the provisional license, it's a pack, you know. And when this issue had happened, and we're trying to support some stations, it was a whole lot of things, and some of them did not understand. Some had changes in staff within the organization, etc. So I think it's a good move to orient people on what they're going into, especially the new ones and even the existing ones, to make sure that you meet all the requirements. You know, earlier I had said that, yes, it's a regulator, but it's not a cane. They actually are also delivering a service. Yeah. And if it's a service you're delivering, all these things, orientation, communication to the parties at the right time is essential. And then we can have harmony in our very big industry in Ghana here.
Okay, let me just read, because there was some of the wording that was probably confusing for some of us, and maybe you may have a bit more clarity from the NCA before I come to Mr. Nimaku. So it says, the governing board of the National Communications Authority at a board meeting approved the grant of 133 FM radio broadcasting authorizations, which include new applications from whose entities FM stations were closed down after the 2017 audit, as well as existing stations which applied for renewal of their expired FM radio broadcasting authorizations. Now, the approval from the board is subject to the applicants attending a sensitization workshop on the terms and conditions of FM radio broadcasting authorizations. So it's to clarify the legal, regulatory, technical requirements and the like. Then there's the next paragraph which says provisional authorizations shall be issued to the successful applicants at the end of the workshop, and frequency shall be assigned to the applicants upon the fulfillment of the conditions of the provisional authorization. I see 2 layers here. So it means that those who've even got these, they can very well not move to the next stage. They can be deemed to fail.
Oh, no,
Can I jump in?
Yes, and then the bit about frequencies shall be assigned to the applicants only upon the fulfillment of the conditions of the provisional authorizations. It makes me also wonder those who were shut down, whether they are actually even going to get the frequencies that they were known for.
Okay. As far as
so please let me just hear from Giba and then yes.
So you know, it sounds more like a regulatory language, and that's the approach that we are also discussing with the NC, that in communicating, yes, you want to be clear from their side. But when that language comes out, then you will see how it is received by a lot of the public. Okay. First of all, we spoke about orientation. Okay. Orientation is essential if you're coming into a place, so you understand how it operates. You know, yes, it's important. You must receive it. When you make it conditional, there's another way you can make it conditional without making it sound that way. Then it looks like you've actually drawn a line, okay, that if you don't come for the orientation, you will not get to the next. You don't get to the next stage. So I know that is what it communicates, but from the prior discussions, with the preliminary discussions we've had, that was not really just the intention. It was like you must make sure that you come for the orientation, which is mandatory. So with that engagement, we can look at how also you communicate to the industry, and then we understand, and then these things do not become big bucks. But this orientation is essential, because when these things happened and we were actually going through with some of the stations, we ourselves encountered, and there was a lot of things that were not too clear at certain stages, and the processes have to be very clear also to the radio and TV stations from the start. So after they do this, we are even recommending that this should be done periodically, I mean, for all stations, and then we can have harmony, and the stations can go and do their business without having that much of...
So you want it for all stations? It shouldn't be restricted just to these 133? Okay. Yes, Mr. Nimaku.
Well, I think if the GIBA really wants to have an expansive discussion for all the stations, actually, I think it's commendable. I mean, they can put the proposal to NCA for them to consider. I don't see anything wrong with it. But you see, for the radio stations that were in violation, it is important that they go to this orientation. Because if you look at the frequency authorization permit itself, it is put there in black and white. You must renew 3 months prior to expiration. 1, 2, 3 months prior to, you must bring your application. And then you don't put in the application, you don't do anything, and then for 5 years, 6 years, whatever, you are there operating. Now, some judge made a certain point that he disagrees, or NCA wrongly shut down the radio stations. That point, I disagree with him. Because you see, how did we get to where we are? If all successive chief executives of NCA, if all successive boards of NCA were looking at the act that set them up, and we are applying the act within its strict terms, this situation would not have gotten here where we got. You see, that is the difficulty we find ourselves. Because how can a station be operating for, let's say, 6, 7 years, running through a system when another government was in place, and they were never shut down? Another government comes and says, look, have seen that you've been operating without license after my audit, and therefore I'm shutting you down or I'm fining you. Then you take us to the tribunal. When they say, oh, you don't exist, then...
But Honorable George mentioned that some of these things should not be done retrospective. I mean, you forgive the sin because at that time, both of you are sinners.
No.
Both the regulator and the operator. And then you start on a clean slate. And I think that probably may have been a more humane way to approach. Because some of the stations, their staff had been out of work to the extent that some staff could not get employment because of perceived bias, because of where they work. They've struggled through the last 3 or 4 years.
In fact, that is a moral matter. It's a moral matter. But you see, I can tell you, most of the stations like Radio Gold and XYZ, they have been operating online. They have been operating since they were shut off. With the frequency, they've been operating online.
The revenue model is not the same.
I agree with you.
It's not the same.
I agree with you, but you see,
lost more than 60%.
I agree with you, but you see, where the law clearly says that where a radio station fails to renew a license within a period 3 months prior to expiration, you shall cease to operate forthwith. And yet you have been operating even though your license has expired. So I think that now that where we are now, we shouldn't go back to that place again. We have to make sure that now it's a clean slate. You go in there, you go for your program, your sensitization. When you go, they tell you the conditions precedent upon which we can give you the license, your obligations under the license. After the program, you go and meet the specification for the grant of your temporary license, and then it's given to you. And then when you go, the next stage is that you begin your 5-year authorization. And they should make sure that there will no breach, because even when they are giving the license and there's a breach on the license itself, you can be stopped from operating. You see, because the system is regulated.
So from now on, we are going to see the regulations being applied to the letter.
To the letter.
Okay.
That is on condition that all Ghanaians, whether MPP, whether NDC, whether whatever political party that assumes the rules of governance, will take the view that we are going to apply the law, irrespective of which station, in our view, is aligned to us or otherwise. Okay. Else, we are going to go back again. Okay. Because assuming people perceive this as a political matter, then what will happen is that if in the very unlikely event that NDC maybe comes to power one day,
but Sam George has said that they are not going to.
No. But Sam George is only one. He's one view. I mean, you see, in politics, I can have my view. You can have a view, but there will be a policy direction from the top that can operate. You can express your views anyway, but that your view may not be the majority views. But we must all understand that if we want the law which our lawmakers are going to Parliament to pass for us to guide that sector to operate, let us all respect the law, so that at the end of the day, we don't appear to see that the MPs went to Parliament, they pass a law to regulate all of us in the industry, and yet the law is violated, and when it's applied, then we say it's politics.
Okay, yes, Honorable George, and then
one thing I would say clearly to Gary is that the NDC is a party that respects the rule of law, unlike the party that you support. You have not respected the rule of law. Anyway, but the issue here for me has to do, and first I'll take it with from the release, the statements in the release, and then I'll end up on the issue of previous NCA boards apparently appearing not to have acted and what influenced that. On the issue of the statement, you see a twofold statement or a twofold approach to acquiring or to securing the provisional license. One is an attendance, and then successful attendance will lead to that. Now, what is successful attendance? If you are supposed to go there for an orientation, you sit through.
Are you just to show up, or?
I don't know I don't know the structure that the NCA is going to use, but one way or the other, I'm sure that. But you see, the reason why it's important that there's this condition precedent for me, from where I sit, and my understanding why we didn't oppose it in the negotiations with the NCA was very simple. 133 stations. I know some of the stations that are literally dead. Equipment for 4 years has not been used. theft has happened to some of their transmitters. So there may be some of these stations that genuinely, as a result of the actions that were taken in 2017, can just not come back on air. Because, look, their transmitters have developed problems. When you are operating, you're constantly maintaining and servicing this equipment. Okay, you've got remote sites that are, which are your Ajangote and wherever you guys have these transmitters, or your transmitter base stations and all of that. Many people have actually not visited their transmitter base stations in 2 years, 3 years. They don't know the state. So it's important. And you know, strangely, one of the owners of the radio stations 2 weeks ago called me up and said, "Sam, I'm looking to sell my transmitters." And I said, "Please don't. Please don't. Because in maximum a month, I am confident you'll be back with your frequency. So please hold on." And he says, "Look, we can't again, because we've been trying to manage it, and even the cost of keeping security at the site." You know, and Gary, it's, yes, Radio Gold, for example, you mentioned Radio Gold specifically, may have been broadcasting online, but it is completely different from if you were running. Nobody's going to place an advert on an online radio station. I mean, our online broadcast in Ghana has not reached that stage yet for you to say it's marketable, for you to say I can even pay. At times, there's no revenue to even pay for the data with which you're streaming. So they have really had challenges. These companies, these radio stations had invested heavily in the training of their staff. They lost all those staff. So it's like investment has gone down the drain, because now if you say switch on today, you need quality human resource to run a station competitively. Now to the issue of why it appeared, and I can speak about this because the NDC was in power at a certain point in time where it appeared as though the law was not being applied stringently. I know for a fact that at a point in time, the NCA was looking to do some clampdown. But then there was a directive that was given that said the media space was looking very tough, and Higiba is here, economically. Many of the media houses, and look, Media General is arguably the biggest or one of the biggest media entities in Ghana. Ask them how their books are looking. Ask them how profitable the business is. It's a very competitive space. It's been, I believe we've overchoked the industry. We've got too many players in a small market, and it's crowded out quality. It's also created very little in terms of revenue, because everybody is getting a piece of the pie. And so it's become very difficult for many of these media houses to run. And so the directive was more of an amnesty. That said, maybe it was not formally written to have said, we are waiving your renewals for this period to this period. But there was that decision taken at the NCA that, look, many of these companies are struggling to even stay on air, struggling with paying light bills. If we were to, and look at some of the fines that were given, 120 million Ghana cedis. If you sold the whole of GBC's assets, it won't be 120 million Ghana cedis.
120,000.
No. The fine for Radio Gold was 120 million Ghana cedis. Do you get it? So some of them had 60 million. Some of them had 5 million. Look, there is barely, I doubt if there's any media house in Ghana today that if you find them 5 million Ghana cedi can pay. I doubt it.
I thought the understanding was that they should come and negotiate.
You get it? No, yeah. But you see, so for me, there was that decision taken. It was more of a humanitarian intervention that was given as a directive,
which unfortunately didn't come forward later.
Exactly, and that's why. But that's what I'm saying, that we shouldn't come here again. And both the regulator and the operators must learn to communicate. You get it? There must be a lot more communication, because you see, ultimately, I make the case, a dime wasn't paid by any of these media houses.
All right, let's take a quick.
So
they are beginning fresh.
Yes. No, but you see, so could we have just said to them, okay, the same way you're not taking any revenue now, okay, you've been in breach. So we're resuming again and then start afresh again. That's what some of the issues we put ahead of you. Okay, why did we have to wait for 4 years for them to go through all of this if we could have reached this stage? But bottom line is, one thing I want you, and I don't know if you're still alive for the NTA, one of the things we insisted in our negotiations, which we will still insist on, is that frequencies must be maintained. So far, as far as I'm aware, the NTA has not issued any of the existing frequencies to anybody over the period of time. Because you know the argument for that, Gary, the argument for that is...
Why are you going to insist on
Okay, so we are going into an area.
Let me just land. Let me just land on it.
To take a break so that you can have more time to deal with the frequency issue.
Okay.
And then I'll bring in the Giba president.
If we can have the time
so
to do
let's just
yeah.
take a quick break and then we'll be right back. And I'll also take some of your messages later on. Thank you.
Yeah, I know.
You're welcome back to hashtag The Key Points live on TV3 and 3FM. Just a few of you who've been tweeting at me. This one from Papa J Jr. says, closing down the radio stations was a political move by this government. My question to the NCA, what has changed now before asking over 60 radio stations closed down to resume operations? Well, what has changed is that some of them went back and reapplied and got back on air. Others still fought it out, but now we've come to a point where no one has paid anything. All they're going to do is meet the requirements to be on air. Of course, that will come with some fees and the like. This one from David Adu says the closure of the Radio Gold and others is one which was predicated on selectivity. And this one says from Papa J. said, Jifa, are you saying that in Ghana, under this current government, Ghana is noted for free speech? Well, that's a rhetorical question to me. And those were some of your messages. Thank you very much. So let me come to Mr. Sunkwa Mills, president of Giba, because what we are now not sure of is whether the radio stations in question maintain their frequencies. It's one of the questions we did ask, but we didn't get a clear answer. What do you know?
I'm in a position where I cannot tell if they still have the frequencies. But our recommendation actually is to maintain the frequencies that they had previously, if it is possible.
But if you're given authorizations and it's about getting into the broadcast business, if your frequency is changed, you are given another one, at least you still get back on air.
Technically, yes, but in this, for the existing stations, let's take, say, Radio Gold. Okay, all the communication collateral, advertising, everything they have, and even what is imprinted on their listeners they had, and they've been online, is 90.5. What it means is that if you change that number, they must spend money again. Remember, they're coming back. The transmitters have been sitting a while. If you change that number, based on some situations, you need to retune. You need to change all the marketing collateral, and you need to try to get people to remember the new.
So you have to rebrand.
Frequency. You're rebranding. It's billboard.
And that's a lot of money.
It is a huge amount of money. And remember that they are coming back after almost 2 years of not operating, not making any cash flow, any real cash flow. Jobs have been lost. So it would be a good consideration, from the NCA, if they can, to maintain for the existing stations their frequencies.
Is that an application that Giba can make in this process?
It's a conversation. I keep saying that because I think a lot of the stuff, progress that we have made has been through the engagement and discussions. Be it tough, be it that, but that's where we actually see progress. But it's one of the recommendations. And there are very valid reasons that we can share. It softens the ground for them. And so this is the direction that I think.
Mr. Nimaku, will you give them their frequencies back?
Oh, I am not the DGO. Neither am I the board chairman or sitting on the board of NCA. We are only external solicitors. They come to us when they are in need for us to advise them. You understand? And we do so advise. I cannot commit the NCA at this stage whether to allocate the same frequencies or otherwise. But I think it's a matter for engagement. They should engage the NCA in a very sublime and a very nice tone, not coercive language, in a manner that they themselves will see the economic reason why they should maintain the same frequencies for them. Because you see,
but doesn't it go without saying?
It doesn't go without saying, because this is a new, it's a new thing now.
It's a new application that you are being given.
The old regime is gone. You have sat down, allowed the frequency to expire, run its full term, you never renewed, and the law is that it shall cease to operate, you will not operate at all, and then now you've taken off the air, and so everything is gone. So technically the understanding of the law is that you are not coming fresh. So everything must now come fresh, given new frequency. That's the understanding of the law. You see, but we have to look at the law.
And what is the spirit? What is the spirit behind the law?
Yes. Also, within the context of the economic environment that we operate, within the spirit of the radio stations, what they have been known to be operating, the frequency. For instance, maybe their logistics, their viewership or their listenership. You have to look at everything and then say, let me consider if it is feasible, if it is appropriate under the circumstance for us to issue them with the same frequency. That is why I will advise every a radio operator who was affected by this exercise, go to the NCA with a language that they will find that language palatable. You see, negotiations, you don't go there and become boisterous and say, well, I insist that I want to be giving the same frequency, because it is not us of right to be given the same frequency. But I think it's a matter that when they put it forward, the NCA should be able to consider, to look at the circumstances and then say, well, given the fact that you have been off probably economic-wise, you've been affected injuriously, this, that, well, let us see how we can deal with this matter, because it's a different thing altogether. But I cannot commit the NCA sitting here that NCA must, as a matter of course, issue the same frequency, licenses or the modulation numbers to the affected stations. But I think it's important that they go there with the posture that they will find it much more better, a posture that they will find that, look, let us consider giving them the same thing so that they can just go and do their business.
Honorable George, is there a risk of the stations losing their original frequency modulation number?
If I may need more anointing oil and insight from the Holy Spirit to be able to determine exactly what the NCA will do. Technically speaking, Gary is right. These are new frequencies that are authorizations that are going to be given, and the NCA is at liberty to assign a frequency modulation number to you, to every application. However, it is looking for my choice. It is prudent. It will be prudent. It will be prudent to, in the instances where the previous frequency modulation number has not been reassigned already to another entity, it would only be prudent for the NCA to reassign to the new license that they are giving to the existing entity. Because you see, like Mr. Cecil says, it's the cost already. The stations are coming back at huge cost to get back on air again. You don't want to raise the cost of coming back on air. I mean, you change. Look, radio and TV, the media is about brand identity. Identities have been built. Radio Gold, for almost 30 years? Okay, a certain brand has been built for 30 years. There's brand identity with a number. And so if it's not like TV, where the channels vary from house to house and how they, but with radio, it's fixed. You know what dial you're tuning to. If you change it, the technical setup from recalibration of transmitters and all of those, and to even things as basic as stationery, to jingles, everything has to change. And all of this will come at cost. Already, these are people who are saddled with huge costs to start up again. So I cannot make a demand of the NCA. However, I can make a recommendation to the NCA that it will be prudent to consider this. And like I said, giving the rapprochement, or is that not how they say it? That has
the easing of the relationship.
Exactly. The kind of atmosphere that exists right now between the ministry, led by the minister, the NCA and its new board, and the committee. I think that we can work together to, as much as possible, maintain everything. I think that it will be a fair position to take.
But Honorable
we can
Judge,
make that recommendation, and I hope that if the minister is watching us, she would give such a policy direction out of good faith. I mean, she's been my friend of late.
you are the best. You have been best friends since the vetting process.
Please, I beg you, don't go there. I beg you.
So, in terms of the costs, it raises the question about how many radio stations, TV stations we should even be having in this dispensation. Because not many of the radio and TV stations are making money, and so staff also suffer. It leads to the multiplier effect where then quality also suffers. What's your view about the stations? Mr. Sunkwa Mills indicated that we have as many as 428
we have
on radio that are active.
575 authorizations.
But they are not all of them working.
428
are on air.
And then for TV, we have 146 authorizations, and 102 are on air.
Yeah. Those are huge numbers for 30 million.
I mean, when you look at the radio per capita of Ghana, that's one of the highest in the world. And
it's not boding well for business.
Well, I'm stammering. I normally don't do that because what I'm about to say may land me in trouble, but it's the truth. We've used radio frequencies for political gain. Both political parties. Both parties come into office and just assign frequency authorizations, and we've flooded the market. I mean, and flooding the market does two things primarily. It affects the ability for the businesses to be viable, because you're chasing the same limited market. The number of companies that will place advert spots is not increasing, but you're increasing the number of radio stations, and all of them are chasing these advert spots. So the best a business will do is, instead of spending 1 million Ghana cedis, which was my advertising budget on one media house, I'll split it out over 10, and everybody gets 100,000. But don't forget, each of these 10 media houses are still running the same overhead cost, and so it makes no value for the media houses. And again, you may not actually get the best value for the entity placing the media spots. The other thing it does is that because your revenue streams as media houses are dwindling, I mean, and there's no media house that has its revenue stream on the up in Ghana over the last 10, 15 years. They're all this way, okay? It then means that your ability to produce quality material and content is also dipping. And that's why today, largely, the content on our radios and TV is religious.
They are the ones who
I'm not saying it's bad,
but they can afford to buy.
It's either religious or fetish,
or are reality shows,
or reality shows. You get it, and you've lost that. There is a verve in the there's a verve with our radio that's no longer there. And yes, we can blame the media houses all we want, but it's a business. It's give or take. Do we have to have a cleanup of the radio system? I'm not going to call for that. That won't come from Sam George, okay? But a hard and tough decision has to be taken. Because you see, and I hold the view.
Whether we continue to assign licenses,
or whether we say, look,
or whether we say we've reached our threshold, let's leave it here.
The spectrum is full in almost all our capital cities.
So
the spectrum is full.
Yeah.
Okay, and you look at the quality. Are we going to say that we want to go back and look at the law properly? And Gary, look at the law carefully. Syndicated radio, is it legal? Is it lawful? Look at the allies that set up the NCA and the NCA's Act. There was a reason.
This is where maybe a station in Accra is syndicated on.
So one person
radio
is sitting.
station.
One person is sitting in one radio studio in Accra,
and then you
is speaking to the entire nation across a number of radio stations that are affiliates or are owned by the same entity. If you read the intentment of the law, it was only GBC that was supposed to have such reach in the country for national security reasons. We've, over the years, relaxed it, but does the law allow for it? If you are looking at a cleanup, these are some of the areas you may begin to, because you realize one business entity is holding 15, 10, 8 frequency authorizations. One person misinforming the public from one studio has the potential of going across the country, and the damage that is done is wider than you think. Again, many of these media houses are not abiding by the delayed broadcasting that allows for you to be able to stop some dangerous information from going out or a dangerous slip. There's several things that I think that if the NCA really wants to actualize this law, can do in conjunction with the operators. It shouldn't be draconian. It should be a roundtable conversation, because ultimately these steps must inure to the economic benefit of the entities in the media space. So if you carry them along and work with them on it, work with Parliament on it, you can have a decent approach to making it more viable for everybody.
Okay.
Those are my thoughts on this matter.
Those are your final comments. Final comments from you, Gary, and then I'll take final comments from Cecil.
Well, I think my final comment certainly will be that where we have gotten to, we should never go back there. There's no point at all for us to go back to where we came from. You know, all of us, those in the media space, Giba, your members, the regulator, they should ensure, and the politicians, I'm just sitting there, the politicians, you know, they should ensure that everybody abides by the law. That is the reason why my brother is in Parliament. They go and make the laws for us. We have to abide by the law. Now he's sponsoring LGBT. We see how he's going around the country, and you know, after everything, when he's done, and people say that we will not abide by the law, what will be the effect on society? So all of us must learn to abide by the law.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Nimaku. Yes, Mr. Sunkwa Mills.
Yeah, so on our side, the announcement from the NCA, it's good news for us, and we would want to go into another era of improved engagement with the regulator. Let us start with this sensitization or orientation. And you did mention we must bring something for the NCA, but this is a discussion. I think it goes more also to enhance the work of the NCA, to even propagate these refresher workshops, and it makes your regulation work easier. The other thing that I want to mention is that with the cost issues, we need to relook. The economic environment for broadcast has completely changed. When we have a fixed advertising revenue basket for the country. We had a number of stations. Now we've extrapolated a number of stations across both for radio and TV, chasing the same amount of money. Now they're paying, if you look at what stations, there's licensing, there's taxation, yes. We've got to pay for copyright issues, ASOC and that. And a lot of stations are really struggling. So we want to have that engagement with the regulator and look at the costs that are involved, the economic costs, then we can create enough jobs. And one of the things that we do as broadcasters, besides giving information, this is the place where we develop local content to sell our country. But it's done with money.
Right.
So we need to have that economic conversation also.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And some of your messages quickly as we wrap up. AU from Tamale North. Seriously, government and the NCA have achieved their goals when they closed down Radio Gold and XYZ over the 3-year period. Time will tell. Kudos to our MPs. Charles says, thank God Radio Gold is back, and we hope the neutrals will soon remain silent as they have been. Aziz from WA says the position of the NCA 3 years ago was totally unfair. This was needless and unfortunate. The NCA cannot hide under laws to shut down these stations. The question is, have these stations paid the so-called monies the NCA was demanding? Do you know the unemployment their action has caused? Must we target political opponents? Time will tell. And Baba Abdul in Tema says the NCA was simply biased on the application on the law on the media houses for defaulting. Their statement to reinstate them is also premature, as they could have done the workshop before announcing the amnesty. And those were some of your messages. Thank you very much. And I want to thank our guests, Mr. Nimaku, Honorable Sam George, and Cecil Sunkwa Mills. They will stay with us, but we will swap Mr. Cecil Sunkwa Mills with another guest. We'll be right back. You're welcome back to the Key Points on 3FM 92.7 as well as TV3. We are live at 3news.com. Thank you very much for staying with us. And thank you for those of you who've sent your messages on Twitter and by SMS so far. So there's been an uptick in the number of Ghanaians who've had their mobile SIM cards linked to their national ID card or Ghana card. Now, many Ghanaians are now realizing that earning their income, making calls, and indeed seeking to facilitate business is going to be daunting going forward without a national ID. Now, a lot of work had been done to inform us this year about this process. The GRA Commissioner did same, the Ministry of Communications did same, and also SNIT did same. Now, the reality is now dawning on us that there are implications if we don't get this done. But there's a concern that it seems that people's mobile numbers, people's salary is now becoming the bargaining chip. And many workers are not happy. Let's hear some of them.
For the payment side, I feel like you've worked for the month and you deserve your pay. So I wasn't too happy when they said you will not be paid at the end of the month because of a card. It together. But I feel like it shouldn't be limited to just the Ghana card. I think they should allow the passport and also the voter's ID, because I know I have both and I know they are all biometric because I went through the process of fingerprinting and all. So I think when it's open to all three, it's more flexible than just sticking to just one Ghana card. And then the month too is December. That's a festive period. You can't hold people's money like that.
Though it's good to have the Ghana card, all right. But it's not something like we should say that, yes, unless you have the Ghana card before you have your salary. No. If the person is entitled to have his or her salary, let the person have it.
If the system is helping, they can use 1 month. They can register everybody. Look at a big corporation like this. With one computer, how? How many people are going to register a day? 5, 10 people? No, it won't work.
They have to give us a little time, at least up to March, so that they can educate people about it. But if they start from 1st December, as the government was saying, I think there will be a whole lot of confusion all over the ministry or civil servants. I don't think that one can help. But it's a good initiative, though. Yeah, it's a good initiative. So one way or the other, this card must work. They have to start from somewhere. Yeah, so that is my view.
I think it is laudable to have the Ghana card as a public servant or anybody at all who is a Ghanaian citizen. For me, if controller thinks getting a Ghana card as a public servant will help to address a particular issue that has been happening yearly, then I am for it. But if also it is a reason that maybe somebody just wants to sit somewhere because the person thinks I have the veto, I have the power, so I can bully workers just by coming to throw any directive at all for workers to follow, then that is a concern.
You're welcome back, and those were some public sector workers. And let's introduce our new guest, Mr. Abdul Ganiu, who is the Director for Corporate Affairs at the National Identification Authority. Good morning, Mr. Ganiu, and thank you for coming in. I know it's been a busy week for you. So first, the National Identification Authority has been driving this for quite a while. Why are we now seeing elements of threats? So the controller says if public sector workers don't have their card by 1st December, they will not get salary. For individuals like me, by March, if you don't do the linking and the re-registration, you will have your SIM shut down. It doesn't seem like a good approach to engage the citizens, especially on a project that's been going on for so long and there have been hitches through no fault of ours.
All right. Thank you very much for having me, and I say good morning to my colleagues here, Honorable Sam George and Gary Nimaku, and of course, good morning to viewers as well. Now, what is the mandate of the National Identification Authority? Our mandate is to create a central or a comprehensive national identification database that other user agencies can leverage on in delivery of their own services, where the identity of individuals who come before them has to be established. And indeed, as every Ghanaian is aware, we embarked on a mass registration exercise that took us to every region of the country, and the target during mass registration was to capture 80% of the adult population, and 80% of the adult population meant people who were 15 years and above. When mass registration ended, we looked at the numbers and realized that we're just a percentage shy of that 80% target. So we conducted a mop-up registration again, where we clustered the regions of this country into various zones. We went round again to conduct registration. And by the time the mop-up came to an end, September 2020, we had captured 85% of that adult population. But of course, we recognized that there was still some 15% of the adult population yet to register, and also a whole population of persons from 0 up to 14 that we haven't registered at all. So going forward, there was then the need to establish permanent regional and district offices across the country to facilitate what we call continuous registration, so that registration and the rendering of identity management services become an everyday affair that anyone at all can access at the district level. So that is what we have been at. But in the identity management space, the best practice is to always capture about 80% of the population that will have continuous need of the data from time to time. So where you have captured 85%, then it will make sense that all these other user agencies can begin to leverage on it, can begin to piggyback on it and whatnot. And that's what we have been experiencing over the last couple of months.
But is it really the case that 80% of the adult population have been captured? Because I continually hear people say they registered for the card, but they never got it. So it may be that you have a certain data that shows you people have been registered, but it's about whether people have these cards in hand that is the matter.
Jiva, we embarked on the registration when we hadn't conducted the population and housing census yet. But even the projections that we made, the population and housing census figures have come to vindicate that. We're looking at a population of about 30 million. And the adult population, persons 15 years and above, will come up to about 19 million, not up to 20 million. So by the end of the mass registration, we captured over 15 million Ghanaians. So that, in essence, gives you about the 85% of that adult population.
Why are public sector workers unhappy that they will lose their salary because they've not linked their card?
The people are certainly going to complain. Even if it is one person who has not yet registered for the Ghana card, obviously, the person will speak about it. So you are hearing people in their tens, in their hundreds, or even in their thousands who have not yet registered for the Ghana card. For these people, so as long as they are Ghanaians and they are not precluded in any way or form, they will surely talk about the fact that they've not yet registered, and we are going to hear their voices.
But isn't it the case that your offices have seen an upsurge? I drove there on Tuesday, and the numbers were huge. You've had to set up tents from one end of your wall to the other. You've removed your cars to do that.
And I'll be making the point that if you come to headquarters, it's not just persons coming to do new registration. You have other people who have lost their cards, and those people have come for those cards to be replaced. You have others who come to do updates. So say wrong spelling of a name, or somebody has gotten married and wants to add the husband's name to her name. Any kind of update that a person wants to do, the person can come to the NIA, and NIA will do the update and print a new card for him or her. Then you also have foreigners who come to register for the non-citizenship card. So when you come to the NIA, you find all these people there seeking various services, but you get the impression that all the people here are for new registration. There's just one tent that takes care of people who come to do new registration. All the other tents you find are probably update, card replacement of foreigners who have come to register for the Ghana card. But I do totally agree with you. We should be able to set up more regional and district offices so that at the doorstep of each and every Ghanaian, they are able to seek our services. And that's what we are working towards. I've been assuring that by end of October, these offices would have been set up so that first week of November, new registration will start at the district and regional levels. And then people who have lost their cards will also have the opportunity for those cards to be replaced. So those are the timelines that we have given ourselves. And that should tie in with the concern about controller, because they have given a deadline of 1st December. So that whole month of November, people who have not yet registered for the Ghana card would have the opportunity to do so. And we believe that nobody will lose out on his or her salary.
Honorable George, is the 1st December deadline for workers in the public sector a realistic and fair one? Because many of them were not happy when we checked in with them.
Jifa, what's the legal basis for that directive by the Controller and Accountant General? What
They
law?
are under the...
What law gives them the power to do
They
that?
mentioned the law that requires they manage the public pairs and make payments, and it is based on that. I don't have the exact...
Yeah, no, if production can help us, because I'm yet to see any law.
They mentioned, in fact, we do have the sound of the controller.
That says, a law that says that a Ghanaian civil servant who has worked cannot receive their salary except they have a Ghana card.
They are linked.
Or except the card is linked. I would love to see that law.
Not specifically using Ghana, but they mentioned the law. We'll play the sound.
Yes, I'll be grateful if
we'll
you
play
do.
the sound.
Can I help with that?
Okay,
if you have,
help us
sure,
with that. Yeah.
No, I mean, the National Identification Register Regulation 2012, LI 211, provides the mandatory uses of the Ghana card. And for the 14 mandatory uses that have been mentioned, there's an aspect that says application for public or government services, facilities, approvals, permissions, or benefits, right? So the Control and Accountant General Department is an institution of the state.
Can you repeat again what you just said? Can you repeat again?
Applications for public or government services, facilities, approvals, permissions, or benefits. All right? So this is what is provided as part of the basis of the Ghana card.
But that's for the Ghana card itself. It's not about the salary.
You see, I think let's not confuse.
You provided the information.
Yeah, exactly.
No, allow me to now make
but I need to clarify that just after stating that, so you come in. The Control and Accountant General Department will have to be able to establish the identity of individuals who are on government payroll. And that they do from time to time. I mean, I take salary from controller, and I know the number of times I had to go through that process. We have finally arrived at a point where a comprehensive national identification database exists, and the NIA has the sole mandate in collecting biometric data. So the Controller and Accountant General Department gets to a point where they feel that we now have a secure biometric system in place. They are simply encouraging or asking all public sector workers on the payroll of the state, go do your biometrics so that it will be easy to identify you on the payroll. What is wrong with that?
Okay, Honorable George.
If this is the reason, Section 7, 1M of LI 2111 is the reason the Controller and Accountant General is giving this directive, it flies in the face of the law. It is baseless, it is not factual, and cannot stand the test in any proper court of jurisdiction. I'm reading it. I have it open here. That's why I said I wanted to hear what it is. My wages are not a benefit, a government benefit. My wages are covered by the Labor Act that stipulates that everybody who works is due a wage. My wage cannot be interpreted to be a government benefit. A government benefit will be if I'm getting a
encourage people to go and register.
No. Gary, you are a lawyer. Let's do law.
No.
You cannot hide.
Encourage people to go and register.
If you want us to encourage people to register, let's do that. But do not twist the law.
Yeah, encourage people to register.
And do not claim law that doesn't exist.
Okay, but should we even be putting these kinds of deadlines? It's almost seems, and to be fair, the SIM registration deadline is for 6 months till March. So for public sector workers, 1st December, it seems a bit harsh.
Listening to my brother, you see, the attitude of government agencies, be the Controller and Accountant General or the Ministry of Communications on this SIM card registration, it's wrong. Look, like I said, LI 2111 is not an omnibus legislation. No. It is a legislative instrument for the NIA and its operations. And the interpretation of Section 7, and I'll serve notice, I'll be heading to court. Because you see, and I've engaged the Minister of Communications on the SIM card registration. In fairness to her, she said she would seek further legal advice on it. But I mean, it's almost a month, and so I would proceed to court on it.
She's listening.
That's fine. She'll bear me out that we engaged her and even did a press conference on it. Because you see, my position is simple, Jafar. Read what it says in Section 7. It says a national identity card issued to an individual shall be used for the following transactions where identification is required. Mandatory. However, take, for example, when you are registering SIM cards. The law for registration of SIM cards in Ghana is not LI 2111. The law that governs registration of SIM cards is LI 2006. LI 2006 of 2011, Subscriber Identity Model Registration Regulations. Subscriber Identity Model is SIM. SIM Registration Regulations, 2011, LI 2006. And this is what it says. It says in Section 2 of that LI, listen, 2.1, a network operator or service provider shall register a SIM of a subscriber. 2.2, a subscriber for the purpose of the registration of the SIM of that subscriber shall furnish the network operator or service provider with the following information. A, the name and residential or occupational address of the subscriber. B, the date of birth in the case of an individual, incorporation in the case of a body corporate, or registration in the case of a partnership or an unincorporated body of persons. And C, an identification document. So once it asks for an identification, this is the law that governs SIM card registration in Ghana. Now, if it says I should provide my address and name and my date of birth and an identification document. The LI 2111 says in section 7, 7K thereabout, 7L, that it shall be used, the Ghana card shall be used for the registration of SIM cards. It then means that in the list of documents that can be an identity document under LI 2006, even if there are only 2, the Ghana card must be one of them. But it does not say that it must be the only card. So the argument we are making is that if you are going to go by the law, and that's why I said everything is regulated by law. Salaries are not regulated by LI 2111. People are behaving, the NIA is behaving as though LI 2111 is the law that governs everything in this country. No, sorry, it regulates you. It doesn't regulate registration of SIM cards. There is a law, LI 2006, that has not been amended. Payment of salaries is regulated by there's the Workman's Compensation Act, there's the Labor Act. That is what governs the payment of salaries. You cannot withhold my salary because I don't have a card. There is no law backing it. And so you see, Jifa, he says workers have to be, I've been a civil servant before. I worked in the Ghana Civil Service before coming into active politics. In 2010, I went and did biometric verification. He works in the public service. He's done biometric verification. The Controller and Accountant General, through the Ministry of Finance, holds biometric data of the 600,000 or 800,000 government workers. They don't need a Ghana card to verify who they are paying.
So what do you think they need? Any identity document?
They have biometric data.
So they should use that?
And the heads of agencies, as it speaks now, the heads of agencies have to authorize, they do an authorization to the controller to verify the payroll before the controller pays. So take for example, you take NIA head office. The HR at NIA head office would have to fill out a form and sign to the Controller and Accountant General that there are 614 workers.
Yeah, but that's
with their names.
That's just putting the number there. It doesn't
the 614 workers have names. Now those names have already, all of those names have been captured biometrically at the Ministry of Finance.
I remember that.
You get it? Yes.
Program that
because Jifa, if I give you a Ghana card number, what's the guarantee that I'm still at post? The guarantee that you will not have people being paid who are not at post is not the linkage to a Ghana card. I can have a Ghana card.
No, but the biometric data on the Ghana card also would identify.
No. Why? Are they going to swipe my biometric card before they pay me? No. That's why I'm saying that, look, we are applying this thing wrongly. Okay. You are doing the right thing the wrong way because let's just clarify this.
Okay, I wanted to
in 1 minute.
Oh, sure, go ahead, but I just want to let you know that I want to
in 1 minute. The point I'm making here is that what is the value of the Ghana card? Because the value for payment of salaries, if you link my controller number to my Ghana card, it is not proof that I have been at work for the month and earned my salary. What is proof of that work is the HR document that comes. And my point is, Ghana card has biometrics, yes, but those biometrics already are also on the account of on the books of the CHD. So it doesn't solve anything. It's the same way for SIM card. We are being told that SIM fraud can be tracked using the Ghana card linked to a SIM card. Why? Because if you bring a Ghana card and we register the SIM in your name, if that card is used for fraud, we are going to be able to trace you.
And whether you know the person or not, you are the identifier.
It is incorrect. Jifa, anybody, and look, please go and do a vox pop and ask how many Ghanaians who have Ghana cards generated their Ghana Post GPS, which is the address on the NIA's database, at the registration center. Many people who were registered on the Ghana card process, during the Ghana card process, had GPS codes at the school or under the tree or the church compound where the NIA was set up. That is where the code was generated. So even if I link my SIM card to that card and I commit fraud, touch wood, perish the thought, I commit crime, and you need to trace me and you go and pull that GPS code, it will take you to a tree under a school building, in a school. It won't bring you to my home. And even if it brings you, even if I generated from my home, residential mobility among a large chunk of Ghanaians is very high because of rent issues. Every 6 months or 1 year, people change residences. So you see, it's a good thing. I am for it that let's get a Ghana card. Everybody should go and register it. But don't issue threats. And don't go about using a law that doesn't apply to say that the law says this when the law doesn't say it. Run a promotion or an educational promotion that allows, when I say promotion, not financial, but promoting the idea of getting the Ghana card and the values for it. But let me ask, since it's here, how much will it cost me today if I walk to the Ghana NIA to get a Ghana card?
The NIA,
I'm hearing it's 250 Ghana
That
cedis.
is because you want premium service. That is what, but it's free. If you go to the Registrar General's department or any SNIT or the GRA where they are registering, it is free.
It is free. How long will I take to get my card?
It's not supposed to take long.
No, that's
but
not
the question is no, but it's not supposed to take long.
If I'm a controller, if I'm a controller staff,
okay,
I need to know when I will get it so that I don't lose my salary with this threat.
Okay, but it's not supposed to take more than 15 minutes from what I know. But
ask him how many of the 15 million cards they claim they registered have they distributed?
So the question to you, Mr. and we'll come to Mr. Nimaku, please. Okay. So just hold the question. But the other issue Honorable George raises about even the registration, because we are told that even at the offices of the GRA where people come and register, they can only register a certain, or they are required to register a certain number during the day.
Yep.
It means then that they can't register ad infinitum. It means that if it's 3 o'clock, they've registered 100 people and that's the required number, they pack up shop. Yep. And that's an issue. So hold that thought. Yes, Gary.
You know, I'm wondering why my brother, some George Honorable, had water by his side, but he will not drink the water.
Oh.
Gary, you're doing propaganda. Hey, show my water. I've drunk half. I have even drunk more water than Gary. Raise your bottle, let's see.
You see, he made fantastic points listening to him. Listening to my brother Gary
address for me the immediate issue: should the public sector workers be held to this 1st December date? Because it's not far away.
If I raise a difficult question for me, but you see, let me say that I do not think, in my personal view, I do not think that this deadline appears feasible, and I do not think that this deadline really can be implemented, given the NIA's own peculiar challenges. Let's face it, NIA didn't start today. I mean, they started on the first time, they had the issues with it, some cards were issued, some NGC came, you know, they tried to continue, all sort of things. Now, there's a whole, systemic thing to try to reinvigorate and put some fire in it, which I agree with them. Now, is it really the case that they have captured 80% of Ghanaians? Is it really the case? What data supports that they've captured 80% of public sector workers or Ghanaians? I think that we should rather encourage people to register. Because if we say that somebody who has worked and the person will not be given the salary because he does not have and what do you call it? NHIA card, whatever you call it.
NIA Ghana card.
You see, let us be honest with ourselves. We are going to create work for lawyers. That's the honest truth. You create work for lawyers. Because if it is true that I have worked, if it is true that that I'm required to be giving some remuneration, some pay, whatever, and then you say that you are not going to pay me because I do not have an NHIA card, there's a likelihood that those people might, file civil suits against their employers, and by extension, the government. What I will want to say, in all honesty and sincerity, is that National Identification Authority must try to ensure that they register as much more people that they can register. What is the rationale for all these things? It is because of these ghost names and all these things. That is why I think that the control is trying to synchronize people who are actually working and those who are perceived to be on the payroll but they are not in fact supposed to be there. The other thing is the policy rationale, so that we pay people who indeed are alive, people who indeed ought to be paid. But sometimes, if you are not careful, the intention is good, but the communication may have some difficulties with it. Because I do not think that whoever made the announcement that if you don't register by 1st of whatever, you will not get your salary by the end of the month. That is December. Probably maybe intended evil. I don't think so.
Christmas salary.
Maybe the communique. The communique was that, hey, now they say if you don't register, you will not get salary. So then it will motivate people to go and register the card and have their names put on the payroll. So at the end of the day, when they are being paid, they can realize that we are paying 1 million workers. These 1 million workers indeed are alive, they are going to work, not that sort of thing. But if genuinely somebody who has indeed worked, and there is people that have worked, and for the fact that you just say that they don't have the Ghana card, and so therefore you will not pay, you are only going to vex the system with unnecessary legal suits. That is the point that I want to make. So I want you, the authorities, to encourage. That's why when somebody was talking, and I realized that he was not drinking water.
Okay, but there's a separate...
If you had drunk water, it will have slowed down a bit. Because I said encourage.
Okay, so
let's encourage all of us people.
Cheers.
Thank you very much. You see, if you had drunk water, it will have paused a bit. You see, we should encourage people to register. They should register. I mean, because the intention is very clear.
Okay,
it is not because somebody wants to do anything evil for. It's just that we must harmonize the system so that public money is protected. That is all.
Okay, so Mr. Ganiu, let's just take a break, and then when we come back, then you can take off in full flight. It's still key points here on TV3 and 3FM. Some of you have sent your messages already. I'll read them because a lot of it goes to Mr. Ganiu. We take a break. We'll be right back. You're welcome back, and some quick messages before we hear from Mr. Ganiu. This one from Stephen in Cape Coast. Some of us registered but couldn't get our cards. This is no fault of ours. Please let your guests inform us where we can get our cards in the various districts. And he's writing from Cape Coast, but you didn't tell us when you registered to give a better idea. This one says, kindly find out for me, is it true that to register for the NIA card, you have to pay 250 cedis? No. If you go to the head office requesting premium service, you pay 250 cedis. However, if you go to any GRA office or SNIT offices where the NIA has a setup, you can register for free. This one says, in fact, we are suffering in getting registered by the NIA. We are suffering to receive the card. I registered a second day when they began, but till now, I can't find the card. You can't find the card or you didn't get the card. Alfred, you need to be a bit more specific. That's Alfred writing to us from WA. This one says, please ask the NIA official, why are they collecting money from Ghanaians when this is a card that all of us as Ghanaians should have? Why should they charge us for this service? And this one says, good morning, TV3. I collected my card and realized that my date of birth was wrong. I went to the NIA office in Tamale to correct it, but they said they are not doing corrections. How do I correct this? Okay, so you first start with the point
just some two very important reactions. Now, Honorable Sam George alludes to the subscriber identification model, LI, that was in 2011, right? The LI we are talking about, in respect of the mandatory uses of the Ghana card, was passed in 2012. So you're talking about one in 2011 and the other in 2012. And let's be fair here, even though the National Identification Authority was set up in 2006 by the Act 707, the authority really never got on the ground as was expected. It was all hit and miss, hit and miss. And I am told that it even goes way back to the 1970s when we made our first attempt at creating a national identification database. So clearly, whilst services are being provided and organizations will continue to establish the identity needs of individuals, they were surely going to rely on other forms of identities that existed. So if you talk about an identity document, at the time in 2011, where was the Ghana card? The Ghana card certainly did not exist. I am not a lawyer. If it will take us to go back and fine-tune all of these laws, but the most important thing is to understand the intention, to understand what the overall goal or overall objective is for us to be able to rely on one source of identity. But in the past, if you didn't have a Ghana card, obviously a voter ID should suffice, a SNIT biometric card should suffice, a passport, so on and so forth. But having gotten to this point where that comprehensive database has been built, NHIS has stopped issuing identity cards. SNIT has stopped issuing identity cards. And all the other organizations that will normally issue their own identity cards are going to stop. So that is the intention. I mean, Gary is a lawyer here, and he being an honorable member of parliament, I would assume, understands the law better than I do. But we should be looking at the intention going forward, whether it is okay to have a one system secure means of identity that can easily establish the identity means of all of us, or we should still have this plethora of identity cards in the system.
Not necessarily plethora, but we should give people options.
No, wait. So that's the first point. Then the second point is the biometrics, that he seeks to create an impression that controller and other organizations all have biometrics. So really, they can rely on their own biometrics and not the NIA. The reason you must rely on the NIA is because our biometrics are superior. Apart from just taking the 10 fingerprints, we take the iris, and there's also facial recognition. So we are talking about 3 levels of biometrics. These other organizations just take fingerprints. And we are relying on virtually the best vendor that you can find in that space. So as far as cryptography is concerned, and we are talking about CryptoVision. Another sub-vendor is Demolog, for instance, when it comes to what we call automated biometric identification system, where the 3 layers of biometrics are taken: the fingerprints, the iris, as well as the facial recognition. So we have moved to this point where we can say that we have a superior source of biometrics. And that is why Controller and Accountant General would want to rely on that, so that the payroll become cleaner than ever before. And I think that's a very good objective. There are some controller-related issues that perhaps you need to invite Controller and Accountant General to come and deal with. But for us at NIA, we can only speak of our mandate. Our mandate is to register Ghanaians, issue them with identity cards, and as and when a user agency wants to rely on the data, we make it available to them.
But some organizations are even withholding pensions. I just got a message that senior citizens are having their pensions withheld because they don't have a NIA card. And that's a bit
so
harsh.
that is because it is one of the mandatory uses of the Ghana card as well. And the opportunity to register for the Ghana card for these persons who have not yet registered is there. So it's a matter of going to register for the Ghana card and supplying that information for your pensions to be dealt with.
How about a pensioner who is not mobile?
You see, we need to understand what the goals or the objectives
we
are.
understand the goals, but we must be flexible to people's unique circumstances.
Are we going to say that, but for these challenges, but for this...
I'm not cutting you. Sorry. You see, as you rightly said, the intention is to make the payroll much more cleaner.
Exactly.
You see?
Yes.
But in doing so, we should be very careful with accrued rights. Accrued rights. Somebody has worked, I mean, he's entitled to his pension, and we hold pension because he doesn't have Ghana card.
And I is not holding a pension.
No, organizations are doing it.
Holding pension
yes.
because of the non-issuance or non-available NIA card. We should be very careful. You see, let's try to sometimes balance the issues. Because these sort of things, it can invite legal suits against the government. Do you get the point? So, but the question is, why is the person also not having an NIA card? Is it that he has not gone to register,
A lot of seniors are at home. They are not exactly on the move, and then the registration comes. The place is crowded.
For registration.
I think that the solution to this problem is the timelines that these user agencies have started giving. Probably policymakers around the table will have to take a look at it. That I totally agree. So that if controller announces their dates, at the end of the day, NIA cannot hold controller to whatever decisions that they make. But we can only continue to work on our mandate by ensuring that registration facilities are made available as much as possible. Then people get registered for the Ghana card. We have always communicated that it is by end of October, early November, that all our 291 offices would have been set up. When that happens, everyone can walk to the district office and obtain a Ghana card so easily. But for now, we have just 34 registration centers across the country, and those are located at premises of
we have a visual of the controller's spokesperson.
If it is so that even you have our own challenges in making sure that we have operationalized the entire machinery, then why do we give timeline of December 1? Why?
Exactly. So put that to controller.
Okay. So let's hear the spokesperson.
Let us make things a bit fair for everybody.
Yes.
You understand?
Let's hear the spokesperson for the Controller and Accountant General, the Head of Public Relations, Mr. Cephas Dusu.
The responsibility of the Controller and Accountant General is to receive, disburse, and provide secure custody of public funds. And so we take the necessary precautions in protecting government funds. And one of such mechanisms is the reliance on the database of the National Identification Authority. Systems evolve, and as much as systems are evolving, our institution is also supposed to evolve its internal control processes to continue to maintain the standards that is anticipated. The controller does not take delight in stopping people's salaries, by heart, but then as much as we want to pay everyone what is due him, we also have the responsibility of making sure that we can account for what we are paying. And that is exactly what the controller is doing. So we would pay everyone who is legitimately due to any salary, and also take what it takes to verify who needs to be paid before that payment is effected. I have listened to my colleague at the National Identification Authority, and I'm aware that currently they have deployed about 34 registration centers, and they are adding more. It means that they have the capacity and they are doing what it takes to register as many people as possible. And I think that until one makes the attempt and the effort to assess the facility, we can never tell that we cannot go through. The deadline is not today. So the best thing is for us to avail ourselves. If you have not registered, it is better you make an attempt to go and register. When we get to the deadline, we'll review data, and I'm sure the right decisions will be taken by the right authorities. Now, what we are supposed to do or intend to do is not a one-off verification, but we want to be able to do what we call the continuous verification of payroll and pensions. And so the easy database that is available is the National Identification Authority database that has the biometric details or credentials of all Ghanaians, including Government of Ghana employees.
So we're back, and that was the spokesperson for the Office of the Controller Accountant General, Cephas Dusu. So, Honorable George.
I listened to Mr. Ganyu, and he does a good job as a PR for an agency. He puts a good spin on it, but it doesn't mean... It doesn't mean... No. I don't mean that in a derogatory
Exactly.
No, not at all. I'm crediting you for doing a good job.
When you speak,
the messaging is called
something else.
Okay, so the messaging, he's on the message.
So he's sticking to his speaking points.
He's sticking to his message.
Yes.
No, it's what the
now, the fact that those are his speaking points do not mean they are entirely correct. First and foremost, you may have 3 layers or even 5 layers of biometrics. But the fundamental question I ask relative to workers of Ghana is, how does my Ghana card being linked to my controller and accountant general's number, my staff number at controller and accountant general, prove that I have worked or not worked to warrant withholding my salary? The layers of biometric show nothing. It is not as though every day when I go to the office, I must swipe my Ghana card in and swipe it out. For you to clock in and clock out, for you to then say that you are cross-checking my attendance. So how payment of salaries is on the basis of work done. How does the linkage, in all the fine things he said, the fine messaging he's put out, he has failed to show us the linkage between the Ghana card and proof or justification for pay, which is what the controller is doing. Again, I am saying, show me how all of these fine biometrics will lead you to a fraudster who has used the same card to perpetrate fraud, bearing in mind that the residential address you hold or your database was not verified. At the time people registered for the Ghana card, you did not do any verification of their residential address. The Ghana postcodes that were given to you were never verified. And so how then do you determine that you can use that address?
Can I ask a question?
You can use that address.
Let him finish.
To track a fraudster using a SIM card and base a whole SIM registration on the basis of just the Ghana card. Look, Ifa, we are not here.
You also keep coming to
We are not here. We are not here to say that don't register the SIM. I have said SIM registration or re-registration by the ministry is a fine step.
And there are messages to that effect.
But you see,
one of them, let me just quickly read it. This one says, I tried registering my SIM. I tried registering my SIM with my Ghana card, but the reply came that my registration could not be completed because my card is not validated. My question is, how was I given the card without validation? So and a number of people have experienced this, even here. Yeah.
You know where the problem is coming from? The ministry, and I've engaged the Ministry of Communications. The Ministry of Communications is going about the SIM card registration the way they are, on the basis of the positioning of the NIA. The Controller and Accountant General is issuing this position of 1st December on the basis of the positioning of the NIA. And that is where the problem is. The NIA must know that the Ghana card cannot be the sole card for every transaction in Ghana. It could be a mandatory card. So for every transaction in Ghana, you can access it if you have the Ghana card. So it's simple for you. So take for example, if I have a Ghana card and I want to go and do SNIT, I can just go there with that one card. I want to do health insurance, I can go there with that card. But that must not preclude any other person who wants to access the same service with another legally obtained national identity from obtaining that.
It doesn't preclude anyone.
No, but that's what's happening now.
Because everyone can go for the Ghana.
No, because right now, the position of the agencies is to preclude the enjoyment of certain rights, so long as it is contingent on only the Ghana card. So what we are saying is, for example, the SIM card registration should be done using the Ghana card, the national passport, and the voter's ID card. Because that is what the law says, not what NIA thinks. The law that I read to you, section 22 C or something of LI 2006 says that the registration of a SIM card must be done with an identity document. It does not say with the national identity card. It says an identity document. The Ghana passport is a national identity card. My voter's ID card is a national identity card. Today you are asking me to use a Ghana card. A Ghana card that I cannot even use in a bank.
Says who?
says everybody.
A lot of people cannot use
it. It is true. The banks are not accepting the Ghana card.
It is true, Mr. Ganiu.
Okay, so
just
give me some time.
Mr. Ganiu, it's true. A lot of people cannot use the Ghana card in the bank.
So can I react to that?
Yes, so react to that because there's a perception that you have not engaged fully with the banks. I understand there are some charges that go with the use. The banks are unwilling to
use the Ghana card.
And so they've rejected the Ghana card.
So let me make the point here. The difficulty was an electronic verification platform where if a Ghana card user gets to the bank can get it and verify the person's information. So after mass registration, we have been able to build that platform. We have successfully piloted it with Cal Bank, and as we speak, all their branches accept the Ghana card. Now, as you indicated, the banks themselves must put in place some infrastructure across their branches so that when people come with a Ghana card, they are easily verifiable. At that point, it's not the fault of the NIA.
It's not about money. It's not about money.
So let me make the point. He has said is to agree that if I walk into any of the other 22 universal banks,
no, Fidelity,
I cannot use the Ghana card.
As and when a bank is
this is the fact.
As and when a bank is ready, the bank counts, and they are onboarded.
I'm closing and going.
So a couple of banks have already been onboarded. UBA is onboarded. Fidelity is onboarded. So the onus at this point is on the banks to get their infrastructure ready, signal NIA, and they get on board.
Mr. Ganiu,
then quickly,
if I walk to any of the commercial banks today, if I walk to Ghana Commercial Bank is the largest bank with the largest branches in Ghana. Can I use my Ghana card in Ghana Commercial Bank?
Ghana Commercial Bank.
It's a yes or no.
Come on board.
Can I use it? No. But if I go there with my voter's ID card, I can use it.
We all keep missing the point.
No, but the fact is that the banks are not using it.
I think this point is about Ghana
so
as much as possible.
Bank,
just give me the time
to
make these
universal banks.
You see, NIA is in the middle of all these.
So there is the need for a more multi-sectoral.
We'll go to court and get a Supreme Court to rule on this matter.
So
you plan to go to court?
Oh yes.
So
why?
Because they are misinterpreting Section 7 of LI 2111 and using that to tie the hands of all other state agencies and making the Ministry of Communication say they can only use the Ghana card. Making the Controller and Accountant General say you can only use Ghana card. If not for the interpretation of Section 7 of LI 211 by NIA, the Ministry of Communication, I know, would have allowed for other cards, national ID cards. But it's because of the NIA's posture. So we challenge that interpretation in the Supreme Court.
You see, quite a couple of issues.
Okay, so I have to let Honorable Sam George go because he said
a number of
he has an appointment.
A number of issues have gone to court in respect of NIA.
It's almost time.
Right from 2017 up to date. And I can assure you that on all such court cases, NIA has triumphed. So we cannot do anything wrong. So as far as our interpretation of the law is concerned,
I guess
we equally have lawyers or a legal team that will go through the lines and at all times give us the interpretation. Quickly on
the Supreme Court will settle that matter for us.
Very quickly on this matter of why only the Ghana card and not passport and others for same registration and whatnot. Again, ask the National Communication Authority and the telecos, what is the objective for the SIM card re-registration? It's about KYC. Know your customer, all right? And when it comes to establishing the identity of the individual, if you have a national identity card, as against other sectoral identity cards, for instance, if you talk about the Senate biometric card, if I am not a Senate subscriber, I cannot get that card.
We haven't said Senate. We said use the passport.
Passport. What's the essence of a passport? A passport is to facilitate travel, basically.
But it's
to
identify you. Document.
So the primary document for identification, if you have a Ghana card and a passport, certainly it is a Ghana card.
But if I'm traveling, they will not recognize my Ghana card. They will look at my passport,
yes,
which has
because at that point,
I'll just read something. Let me read something to you from the law. Section 7, the same Section 7, 7J. A national identity card issued to an individual shall be used for the following transactions where identification is required. J says registration of voters. We did a voters registration in 2020. Why was it not only the Ghana card that was used? At that time, you had printed Ghana cards. We went to court as well, and
by that time the EC went to Parliament. Just a constitutional instrument.
And challenged the fact that you cannot use only the Ghana card. And that is how come the EC had to come to Parliament with a CI that allowed for other cards, including the national passport and the old voter's ID card, to be used as registration source documents. So you cannot continue. It's the same 7, the same 7. That says you must use it for the registration of voters, which made it possible for you to go to the EC during the registration with the Ghana card and get registered, but also allowed for other cards. It is the same way. The other cards must be allowed for other registrations. I rest my case.
Okay, thank you, Honorable George, and I know you have an appointment. So, Mr. Ganiu, just hold those thoughts there. Let me hear from Mr. Nimaku, and then you have the final word. Yes, Mr. Nimaku.
It's very unfortunate to see that we come to a program and by some deliberate means, no water is given to St. George. If the water even finishes, he's not giving another water to cool him down. You know, it's unfortunate. I think,
he's articulating the
production
must
find a way to give him more water. You know, it's a process, and some understands. It's a process. And listening to NI official, St. George, the general mood of the country, I hold a humble view that the process has not ended. You understand? It's a process. We should not be giving ultimatums at this stage to say that if you don't have this card, we will not give you pay. Because even let me make the point, and because we see why the process has not yet terminated. We don't have. I don't believe that indeed we have a full coverage, or let's say 90% coverage of all Ghanaian workers on the NHIA,
the
NIA card. I have my doubts. That is why I think at this stage there should be more engagement. There should be more encouragement. Let's do more PR work to encourage almost every working person 18 and above who's entitled to this card to register.
15 and above.
Yes, to register. Register and get your. I think we should spend more resources to encourage you to register and get your card.
The offices are not open.
So, because
the regional offices are not open.
Because listening to the challenges that even your company even faces, all right, it is clear that you are not fully operationalized. It is very clear. So, at this stage, I will not encourage any legal suits like what sometimes they say. Because when you file legal suits, you only find money for lawyers. You are creating job for lawyers. You understand? It's with more engagement. Please, let us all sit down and see how we can engage our citizens to register more, so that the ultimate objective is clean up the system, so that we don't have this, perennial thing, ghost names every year. All the general report comes, ghost names and ghost names and ghost names. So let's do that thing. I think that is the objective.
Okay.
This registration of SIM cards. The same objective. That people are using SIM cards when indeed it doesn't belong to them. So can we have a system whereby
isn't
we
that
can
why
trace?
Some people cannot be verified then? Maybe somebody registered the SIM.
Yes.
And they bought it.
Exactly.
Now they are using it.
Exactly.
They are trying to link.
Yes,
and they cannot link.
Yes.
So that is why they can't be verified.
Exactly. People use the SIM cards to also commit crimes and all that. So the policy objective is well intended.
I agree with the policy objective. It is implementation that is problematic.
That is what I'm saying. The manner we
don't do the right thing.
The communication is being done.
Okay.
It's creating a
so,
problem.
Mr. Ganiu, you didn't answer this question. The gentleman in Tamale, they said they cannot correct his card. He said his date of birth was wrong. What should he do?
Yeah, so he has to wait until the regional and district officers become operational.
Then what happens to him linking his SIM card? If he's a public sector worker, he loses his salary.
In fact, SIM card registration for a period of 6 months.
Yes,
and we
but
have
if he's a public sector worker, he should still use it with the wrong date of birth.
Controller have given their deadline, which is 1st December. And I'm saying that in the month of November, would have been present in all the districts and regions.
Okay, so
people
there's
can
still opportunity
register.
for him
People
to
can do updates.
Okay,
people
so
can do replacements.
I think that message came from Tamale. Please wait till the office is opened by 1st November.
Yes.
So thank you very much to gentlemen. Final word from you. Final word from you.
So I'll just making the point that, of course, there's the need for much more stakeholder consultation in terms of determining the deadlines for onboarding some of these user agencies. I totally agree. And I keep speaking to the mandate of the NIA, that ours is to make registration facilities available to all Ghanaians to register for the Ghana card. We've been going through a process of recruitment just so that people can go and work in these permanent offices. And that's what has delayed the process. But now we are at the end of that particular process. And I believe that by the end of October, early November, all regional and district offices would have been operational. So people can go.
So will you tell us where they are, these regional and district offices?
Yes, we will put that out.
You'll put that out.
So when we have finalized all the measures to get the offices operational, perhaps a week from now.
Okay, because what I also know is that internet is one of the drivers of this work you do.
Exactly.
And in some of the districts, the internet is so bad. I've been on recent tours in the Volta region over the last 4 months. And once you cross, you don't get internet. How are you sure that you'll be able to undertake this registration without the hitches that come with internet access
so it's either
problems?
cards are printed instantly or we do what we call deferred printing.
And that is the problem.
So
I'm glad you mentioned that. That is the fundamental problem most people have faced. They've registered.
Yes.
They don't have the cards. I understand there are lots of cards in your office.
Yes, you see, I know people will blame NIA, and I didn't want to get myself into a situation where I'm pushing it back to the general public.
So
But let me say this. In the month of June, we printed some cards that were in backlog, about 1 million of them. We took them to the districts and regions, and we were virtually begging and pleading with people to come for these cards. You understand that? Because we recognize that going forward, these user agencies were going to start lying on the Ghana card and whatnot. So we wanted to do away with the backlog as much as possible, because as much as we keep it, that's a huge cost to us in having to manage that inventory.
Data, yeah.
So these are the problems that we've also faced. In the fall, there were instances where you go to a registration center, just about 5 or 10 people will be registered all day. So people also took it for granted. Now we've gotten to a point they say, same card registration, you must have Ghana card. Controller says you must have Ghana card. Senate says you must have Ghana card. Then at that point, people are beginning to recognize the use of the Ghana card and the reason why they must go for it. So that really is part of the challenge. So we would make sure that the offices early November, they are all operational. Wherever you are located in this country, you'll be able to go and seek our service.
All right, and that's where we have to end. I want to say thanks to you, Mr. Ganiu. He's the Director for Corporate Affairs for the National Identification Authority. Many thanks to you, Gary Nimaku. He is a private legal practitioner. He's also the chairman of the Gaming Commission, and he's also an MPP Communications member, and he has many, many hats he wears. Many thanks to the Honorable Sam George, who is the Deputy Ranking Member for Communications Committee. Thanks to all of you for your messages, all of you for tweeting as well, and for staying with us throughout the morning. My name is Jifa Bampo. Thanks for joining us. We're back next week with another hot edition. Up next, of course, is Warm Up Plus with Yao Ofosulabi and Anelia Alote.